Tummo is something that fascinates a lot of people. It's translated as inner fire from Tibetan, and Tibet is where the knowledge of this ancient primordial human potential was preserved. It can be seen as a siddhi or a supernatural power gained as you work towards enlightenment on a spiritual path. So here it's an attainment or a signpost of your spiritual evolution. But also, if you attain this ability, the energy can be used to purify your body and mind in an accelerated way. You can also drop the spiritual frame of reference and just say that it's a primordial potential locked deep in your DNA or somewhere in your body. It might have been an ability that helped humans survive an ice age and now lies dormant. When the earth warmed and humans gained access to easy clothing and fire, the body decided it could use the energy doing something else. We know the human body adapts very quickly. Take, for example, astronauts who spend time in space. Their bones actually become brittle and weakened because the body sees that in the absence of gravity, it doesn't need to produce such strong bones. So it just sets that strong bone production to a lower level. And when the astronauts come back to Earth, they have to be careful until their body starts to produce the strong bones again. I like to view Tummo as a human potential, especially because often Tibetan Buddhist monastics nowadays seem to want to act as gatekeepers to a lot of their knowledge. So if you research Tummo, you will likely see things saying that you need to rely on a teacher, a Tibetan teacher, for access, that it's perhaps bad luck, bad karma, dangerous, or otherwise to learn or teach. The fact is, these teachings are already open to the world, so they're no longer secrets, and if you have the will to find them, you will eventually find them, especially if you have the internet. My interest in Tummo started in about 2007, and that's what allowed me to connect the dots on the reality of the spiritual path. At the time, I was just studying hypnosis and putting myself into a trance, but I found myself somehow enjoying a feeling of bliss and just basking in that bliss for hours. And I couldn't find any explanation in my hypnosis books. So I started searching on the net, and Tummo seemed somewhat approximate to what I was feeling. And I, of course, was really wanting to enhance the bliss and the ability to feel wonderful no matter what was happening around me. The great thing about Tummo compared to so many other supernatural abilities is that we actually have a body of scientific proof by serious accredited scientists that without a doubt it exists. We also have YouTube videos presenting the study on the Tibetan monks demonstrating Tummo, and we have Wim Hof, the Dutch Iceman, who has attained Tummo, obviously, and he lets himself be tested in many ways. Now, this fact alone, that Tummo exists, should just jolt people into questioning their worldview and start taking what Tibetan monks and spiritual adepts have to say much more seriously. Tummo is frequently translated from the Tibetan to the word kundalini, as they both represent primordial rising energy equated with fire and purification. Now, kundalini, the word in the West, has taken on a host of different meanings, but you can see that they are pretty similar. In Tibet, there's two types of Tummo. One is called esoteric Tummo, and that is the warm mantle of the gods, which is the kind that generates heat, that we're talking about here mainly, but also mystic Tummo, or paradisic bliss, without the heat, but lots of bliss. It's my understanding that Tummo heat, or esoteric Tummo, is an aspect of Kundalini awakening, just trained to produce extra heat. So if you already have an awakened Kundalini, you could theoretically train that energy to produce warmth, extra warmth. Okay, I want to describe some of the techniques used to raise the Tummo fire. But first, I want to describe some prerequisites on how adepts in Tibet traditionally trained. A student of Tummo had to renounce heavy clothing, jackets, furs. They weren't allowed to stand by the fire. They had to meditate outside, not inside, and away from populations, human settlement populations, away from the pollution. And they had to start to meditate before dawn, often sitting on bare ground or on a snowbank. And as an initial rite of passage, the student first had to go bathe in an icy mountain stream and then spend a night naked in meditation. You see what this is pointing to? I think you have to force the body to see the necessity of turning on the Tummo switch. Your body won't get the message if you live in a warm climate or habitually stay in the warmth. Even Wim Hof, who is selling a kind of repackaged version of the Tummo method, tells his students to take cold showers. So if you want to attain the Tummo fire, you probably have to start by getting outside in the cold as much as possible and sending your body a strong signal that it would like to unlock that deeply locked potential. And all the rest of the techniques basically revolve around one basic technique, which is a breathing method. And it's a form of vase breathing where you breathe into your belly, your navel chakra, lower dantian area, hold the breath, compress it, and as you release the breath, you imagine that breath going up your central channel, which is just in front of your spine. And basically, that's all you need. So you can go find a snowbank and practice that for an hour. But there's all sorts of additions and enhancements on that basic method. So, for example, you can visualize the letter A at the spot of your navel chakra, and that helps you focus your concentration because you will inevitably find your attention floating here and there, and especially as you're breathing in and out and you start to feel clouds of bliss around your navel area, and you can visualize your central channel immediately in front of your spine, and more letters at your heart chakra, your throat chakra, and your crown chakra. These letters are not key, but they really help you keep focus. You can read the whole detailed method in Lama Yeshe's book, The Bliss of the Inner Fire. Another enhancement is to dedicate the meditation before you start, and you dedicate the meditation towards the enlightenment and bliss of all beings. Another enhancement is an invocation of a deity or an ascended master. So here the Tibetans usually use Vajrayogini or Haruka, and they visualize the attributes of these deities and then absorb the deity into themselves as they mentally become the deity. Okay, this is where some Tibetan tantrics might put their foot down and say, you need the proper empowerment before these tantric invocations will work. But you could also invoke Milarepa, for example, or Tilopa, who perhaps would, actually lend a hand to a soul practitioner, since they themselves were reclusive yogi and not monastics. So you can invoke them instead. There are more techniques and enhancements. In Naropa's method, for example, they do some kind of abdominal stimulation revolving the stomach. That's known as Nauli yoga. And also they do a kind of shaking like a dog while they're sitting, like a dog shaking a wet coat. And also something that looks kind of dangerous to me, they jump, if you might have seen in the video, they jump in the air and land in the lotus position, and they do that a few times. Okay, I hope you enjoyed my basic summary of Tummo. There are two books I suggest that you get if you want to pursue Tummo. And one is Magic and Mystery in Tibet by Alexandra David Neal. And the other book is The Bliss of the Inner Fire by Lama Yeshe. Both these books describe meditation in quite detail. Now, if you would like me to produce a guided meditation for YouTube that will more or less be based on Lama Yeshe's version, just give me a note, leave a message on my YouTube channel, and I'll probably produce it to you in the future.